Hey everybody, welcome to another off-the-shelf board game review. This week we're looking at Time Stories from Space Cowboys. Now this is a game that lists for 2 to 4 players. Realistically it's really made for 3 to 4 players because the 2-player variant is really a variant. It is in the rule book, but the same variant could be used to make this a 1-player game if you really wanted to. Now thematically, Time Stories is basically if somebody took the TV show from the late 80s and early 90s Quantum Leap and mixed it with more of the more PC classic games such as Myst, Riven, or even some of the more recent games from Telltale Games such as the zombie games based on The Walking Dead, or even some of the games that they did such as ones based on the TV show Game of Thrones, or even The Wolf Among Us. Basically what we're looking at is a very thematic choose your own adventure game, kind of like the old classic choose your own adventure books, but this is a game made for a group of people trying to solve some various mysteries because they are time travelers who send their minds back in time through various time periods. But it's not always historical time because we're going back to alternate timelines, different timelines. We're trying to figure out one grand mystery that's going to be solved over multiple scenarios with multiple expansions, which are going to put all these stories together to create one big story arc. So far we know there are 4 mysteries involved in the game, and we do know these mysteries are linked together, and you'll find that out as you start playing these mysteries out. You're going to start seeing clues that are going to link these mysteries together. The first one we have is one that comes with a basic game, which is going to be an asylum mystery. The next one we have is where we have to save a girl who's going to be on a linchpin and saving all of the planet Earth. The next one is going to be an alternate timeline, a fantasy one dealing with wizards and dragons. And then finally, the 4th one that we know about so far is going to be a Pulp Fiction style dealing with an Egyptian theme. Every single scenario is going to begin with the player starting in this interesting future that the players start in, where they're going to access machines which are going to send their minds back in time. Now I'm trying to avoid a lot of spoilers with this because half of the fun is enjoying the storyline behind all these scenarios. So I'll just let you know the first couple of cards that we see laid out, and these are going to be cards that are going to form a panorama. They're going to basically give you a little history and a little bit of information about what you're dealing with in this specific scenario. One of these cards is also going to tell you how you're going to inhabit the bodies of the people in the timeline you're going to be accessing. Because remember, you're not actually sending your bodies back in time. Much like Quantum Leap, you're sending your minds back in time to take over the bodies of certain people. And it's going to tell you what their statistics are, what those statistics do, and how they interact in the game. And one of these cards is also going to tell you the most important thing, how much time you have to solve this mystery. See, being sent back in time is extremely taxing on these machines, and you can only go back in time for a certain amount of time. And the amount of time you can go back in time is based on the amount of players, and also based on the specific scenarios. Some of the scenarios, as they start getting more complex and more involved, are going to offer you more time. But it does also mean that they're going to be much more challenging and much more difficult. For example, the basic asylum scenario that comes with the basic game is only going to give you 25 units of time, which basically means you're going to get to explore probably about 12 different areas, which can become pretty complex as you look at this map that you're going to be exploring and traveling across. You're going to see it start getting much more complex and seeing that you're going to have less and less time to solve the mystery. But there's basically only one path to victory in the asylum, where you have more complex scenarios such as the Marcy case, which offers you more time and multiple ways to win the scenario. After you've been fully briefed, every single one of the players gets to actually start the scenario, and that's where you're going to start interacting with the game. And you're going to go to a location based on every specific instructions given to you by each specific scenario. And it's going to tell you which location to go to, and it's also going to tell you a little bit about the scenario, a little bit about the locations, but this is where the heart of the game comes in, and this is where you start getting the feeling of a choose your own adventure, or even such as one of the classic games such as the PC games Myst or anything like that, where you're exploring locations, looking for visual clues, and trying to figure out and get to the bottom of every single mystery. See, what every single player is going to do is they're going to get an action pawn, which is going to allow them to visit one of these different locations. And if they access one of these locations, now every player can access a different location, or multiple players can go to the same location. And the reason why you may want to do that is because every time the players access one of these cards, they're going to look at the card and they're going to read it, and they're going to get clues based on what's on this card and information that's on the other side of this card, except they never specifically share this information verbatim with the other players. You're basically supposed to look at the card, gather as many clues as you can from reading the text, reading the information, reading any images that may be on that card, and then you put the card back face down, and then you must verbalize with the other players what you've experienced, what you found, and you try to relay some of the clues to the other players. Now this is where a lot of the fun comes in the game, and why this is best as a 4-player game, because players have to interact. They need to visualize what clues are important, what clues are not important, and they need to relay this information to the other players, but they can't do it verbatim by reading the specific card or showing the hints and the clues that are on the backside of the card. You must discuss with the other players, you must try to share information with the other players, but you can never share exactly what's going on. And the challenge with this is some of these cards may be just encountering other people and sharing information with you. Some of these cards may be attacks. They may be encounters with people who are hostile towards you. And that's where you're going to run into instances where you need to roll the dice, survive combats, and hope for you don't get defeated and lose all your life. Because if you lose all your life, your mind is going to be sent back to the future and you lose access to the timeline for a whole 7 time units, which can be extremely damaging to your team, because as you start losing teammates, things get much, much more difficult for your survivors trying to figure out what's going on in this mystery in this damaged timeline. Now, the really interesting thing about this game is as the players explore and encounter these different locations, they're going to start unlocking these item cards. Now, these item cards are called item cards, but that's kind of a misnomer because they're not necessarily always item cards. They may be allies that are going to help you in your mission. They may be extra map pieces, which are going to allow you to unlock extra sections of this map, which is going to give you different areas to explore, and it's going to help advance your quest to try to figure out exactly what's going on. And not only that, the really interesting thing is, though, even though you only have a certain amount of time to solve all these mysteries, you are actually allowed to carry some of the information you discover each time you try to go through each one of these scenarios. So basically, every time you go through a scenario, if you fail the scenario because you run out of time, you're free to reattempt the scenario, knowing some of the knowledge you've already gained, possibly remembering locations that you've opened up on some of these maps, and also trying to figure out and get to the bottom of every single one of these mysteries. Of course, every time you fail, Bob, the person who is your benefactor controlling this whole machinery, is going to get a little bit more angry with you, which means that your success rate is going to go down, giving you a less and a less of a reward every time you solve these mysteries. If you enjoyed this quick overview and you want to learn more about time stories, such as learning how to play the game, you can check out my tutorial video where I'll show you exactly how to play time stories. And I'm going to make it very, very spoiler free because I went through and did some printouts of some various different things to avoid spoiling the game. Now, I know these aren't the best, highest quality, but again, this is just for a tutorial that's going to be as spoiler free as possible. You can also watch my playthrough of the game, which is not going to be spoiler free at all. I'm actually going to play the very first scenario. Now, I'm going to make sure I only access locations that most people should be able to access on the first playthrough, so I don't give away too much about the game. So it will be a very quick playthrough where I'll go through as minimal as possible, just enough to show you how the game plays. And then finally, if you also would like, you can check out my full review of Time Stories, the game. Now, if you enjoyed this video series and want to see more videos like that, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. As always, thanks for watching.